Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. We're a few minutes late. Our previous U9 and U10 webinar went a little bit later than we had anticipated. We'll get started in just a minute or two as everybody's sort of filing in. Start with a really simple poll, just so we understand the audience in terms of those of you that are with us tonight. We will be recording this webinar, so don't feel like you have to take a bunch of notes. In addition, many of the materials that we'll go over will be available to you via articles and how-tos when we release schedules tomorrow. So don't feel like you got to memorize and all that sort of stuff. So nearly 2/3 of you have coached or managed before. So some of this is going to be review, which is great. The Q&A is open and will be for the duration of our session tonight. So feel free to put any questions in there if you'd like, and we will get to, if it's anything like last meeting, quite a bit of activity, and we're happy to do so. But just want to begin by saying that we're grateful that you've decided to spend the night with us. Tomorrow we're going to be releasing schedules, so hoping to get everybody on the same page and provide an environment where people can ask questions of us so that they know what's coming. And if a question's been on your mind, feel free to ask it and we'll get an answer to you. Just in terms of an agenda, who and what we are, we'll talk about the schedules, we'll go through reschedule process, a little bit on referees, game day management, fall events, who to contact for what, and then, like I mentioned, Q&A throughout. Doesn't have to be at the end. Just really quickly about who we are at TCSL. Recently, our team underwent basically a reevaluation of our mission, vision, and values that happened, maybe it's 8 months ago now. And while these are definitely meant for the public to understand who we are and what we do, it's equally as important that we use these to measure ourselves. So we're always trying to improve in everything we do. Ultimately, it's our goal to raise the level of the sport here in every facet, whether it be leagues, cups, administration, referees, customer service, parent engagement, you name it. We really are trying hard to raise the bar when it comes to the game of soccer here. And we're really excited to have that opportunity each and every day. And coaches and managers are a big piece of our league because they're the ones that ultimately help the teams function well. And our values: collaboration, sportsmanship, competition, and excellence. Again, raising the level of the game is really, really important to us. And we're hopeful that you find the information that we're to share with you tonight very helpful. I just want to start off by covering what's required of all of you when it comes to U.S. Club Soccer and ultimately U.S. Soccer in terms of their requirements. So all team managers and coaches must complete a U.S. Club Soccer background check, complete Safe Sport, and complete a one-time adverse eligibility review process. Again, it's not limited to coaches. Coaches and managers must complete these things. And we would assume that most, if not all of you, have been contacted by your club administration to get the ball rolling on these. The background checks can take 5 to 7 days. An international background check can take much longer, but by and large, the domestic ones, it takes 5 to 7 days. So if you haven't started this, we highly suggest that you start it pretty quick here. Good question. What if our club hasn't given us access to log in? I assume you mean to GotSport. That would be a question that you would raise with your club, who ultimately needs to set you up for access and tie you to the team in which you're involved with. So that would be a good question for your club. So quickly on the scheduling methodology before we go into what to expect tomorrow. We're very proud of the TCSL scheduling methodology. We take into account things like coaches coaching multiple teams in the fall, and actually the spring too. It's not super advantageous to have a coach have a home game and an away game on a certain night. Because in general, or certain day, excuse me, we're talking about the fall. In general, that's probably going to result in a reschedule, which if we can limit, we will. If a coach is home and home on a specific night or day, that's advantageous because the coach theoretically could be on back-to-back fields. It's much easier for the club to control that situation versus if they're home and away. So we avoid that in cases where coaches are coaching multiple teams, which is obviously a reality that many coaches do coach multiple teams. We take into account how many games a home club can accommodate on a certain day by field size. We obviously take into account blackout dates. We take into account match spacing. So, for example, one constraint we put into the system is we don't want on the first weekend teams to play two times. Now, it might happen in certain cases, but they will be limited. We think it's not super great to have your full season a third of the way done after the first 2 days. So we try to space the matches as best we can. And then ultimately our goal is to produce an optimized schedule that's the very best schedule mathematically. We don't build it by hand like we used to. We pay for a service in order to have that happen. We do have a question. Does this need to be done annually related to these requirements? Don, can you tackle that one?
Sure. In terms of the different requirements, the US club soccer background check is good for 2 years. So if you do it this year, you won't have to do it next year. And then you'd repeat it in the 3rd year. SafeSport is a yearly requirement. That's actually a federal mandate that comes to us through the US Olympic Committee and US Soccer. So there's a 4-year cycle with SafeSport. The first year you'll do a longer core training, and then there's a series of 3 refreshers for the next 3 years. The 4th year you start the cycle again with the core training. But that's a yearly requirement. Adverse eligibility review is only done once. It's really just an acknowledgement that you know that US club soccer will be doing that.
Thank you. So in terms of the schedule, this will be released tomorrow. So if 1 p.m. rolls around and you are like, gosh, I don't know if this schedule is going to be released today, unless something catastrophic happens, like GotSport is down, or that would really be the only way we wouldn't be able to get schedules out. We will get schedules out tomorrow. So it might be middle to late afternoon. Don't panic. You will get an email as long as you're associated with your team in GotSport. You will get an email with your schedules tomorrow. Now, there are 2 areas that you will be able to access your schedules. The first, probably most important, at least to begin with, is your GotSport account. So you need to be able to log into GotSport and you need to be associated with your team, which is managed by your club administrator. Okay, so if you don't have access, that would be the person that you would contact. In this account is really where you're going to be doing all of your team administration. It's where you're going to build rosters. It's where you're going to communicate with opponents if you need to reschedule a match or they need to reschedule a match with you. It's where reporting scores happens. And again, if you don't happen to have access yet or don't tomorrow, that will be a good question for your club administrator. And then secondly, all of our leagues are posted on tcslsoccer.com/leagues. That's the public schedule. We keep scores, just to be clear. If you're a U11 team, played U10 last year, you wouldn't have kept scores. We begin keeping scores at U11 in TCSL. Okay, that is where you'll be able to access standings and things like that. Questions? Well, the matches automatically load in the new app tomorrow morning. I don't know what you mean by new app. That would be something outside of our scope. You will get an email when the matches are available for you. And that'll likely be tomorrow afternoon, but it will be tomorrow. Will safe sport training go across sports? Don, you're a safe sport expert. Can you help?
As much as there can be a safe sport expert, that indeed is me. So it ultimately depends on what sport you're involved with and what safe sport training they're requiring. If they're another U.S. Olympic Committee affiliated sport and they're having you do the full core training and then have the series of refresher courses, then it is possible that you'll be able to use that certificate to fulfill your U.S. club soccer requirement. There are a whole lot of different safe sport trainings though. So if it's not those same trainings, you're not going to be able to use that. The way to check what sport your profile is affiliated with is in your safe sport profile. There'll be something called department. In order to automatically sync with US Club Soccer, it should say US Soccer Federation. If it says something else, you won't be able to automatically sync with US Club Soccer through GOT Sport, and you'll need to either enter the certificate number or upload the certificate for manual review.
Yeah, we promise it's really simple. And I say that tongue in cheek because it's not. If you have a question about syncing, a certificate or something's not quite right, ask your club administrator or I will volunteer Don, who's very, very good at resolution, Don@tcslsoccer.com. But probably makes sense to start with your club administrator. But we'll get it sorted out. It's definitely a new reality of the world we're living in, the safe sports stuff. And there are various people that are here to help. Who enters scores? I'll talk about that in a little bit. The referees do. However, we ask that managers or coaches help us keep standings accurate if they haven't reported them within 24 hours. And, we follow up with assigners. We, every Monday we send emails to assigners trying to get scores reported. And sometimes they just aren't reported, which is a problem for our league, quite frankly. So we ask managers and coaches to help us, and there's a method to do so. You just go to US Club Soccer to submit your background check. Sorry to backtrack on that. That's done through GOT Sport. And if you have questions about the process, that would be a good question for your club administrator. Using TeamSnap or Playmetrics, the club or manager will need to enter the games. Those apps don't talk to GOT Sport out of the box. That's a good suggestion, Patrick. Thank you. So yeah, if your club uses, any tool to manage club communication and things like that, the games will need to be loaded in there initially. They won't just appear there. Tammy asked a question. I see that my role is listed as manager in Gosport, but I don't see my team loaded in yet. Should I wait for this to happen tomorrow, or should it already be in there? I'm assuming you mean that players aren't showing up on your roster yet. That means that your club hasn't actually put them there and began to register them with US Club Soccer. And I would anticipate that happens in due time. But that is not tied to your ability to see your schedule. What was the timing to reschedule games if there's a conflict? September 1, do I have that right, Don?
Correct. And I think that's on your next slide.
Is it?
I think so. This is the scheduled release one. Isn't rescheduling coming?
Yeah, it is. Yep. 2 slides from now. Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
it is September 1st. Just some pieces about the schedule. The first play date is Friday, September 8th. The last play date is October 8th. Matches can be played on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. A Friday night, obviously. We limit, one constraint we put in the system is we say teams will only play on Friday night a maximum of 1 time. There may be a select few cases where that is violated, but in general, most teams will only have 1 Friday match. And then lastly, tournaments. So we are not anti-tournament by any means. I want to make that very clear. At the same time, you have 5 weekends to complete a 6-match schedule. That means at least one weekend, you will have 2 matches. I think playing 1 tournament is doable. I think playing 2 tournaments may be problematic for you in terms of your ability to, fulfill a league schedule that has 5 weekends to get it done. So just as you're planning your season, please be mindful that more than 1 tournament, you may be running into an issue getting all the games in. Couple questions. Where can you go to find a list of available fall tournaments? Jen, good question. That is on my to-do list that I'm looking at right now. We have a section on our website that we list those that I need to update, quite frankly. So that's gonna happen tomorrow. So you'll have a listing there. There aren't that many. I want to say there's 3, 4, or 5, depending on the age group. But we'll make sure those are listed there. And then the second question: when you reschedule, are you only allowed to reschedule the Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, or can you reschedule the weekdays? Good question. We don't care if 2 teams are available to play on a Wednesday night and the home club can make it work. There's a field and there's refs. Play on Wednesday night. No problem. No questions asked. Can reschedules go later than October 8th? No. All matches must be completed by October 8th. Kim says NSC Fall Cup and TCSL should work. I'm not exactly sure what the question is. Feel free to rephrase it if you'd like. Kim. All right, so you're going to get your schedule tomorrow. The reschedule period is thus open tomorrow. Just to go over the process and don't feel like you have to memorize it. The 60% of you that have gone through this before, this is a review. The 40% that haven't, there's documentation in terms of how to do this. Don't feel like you have to memorize it or anything like that. So the first step is ultimately communicating with your opponent in GotSport about various options. We want all communication to happen in GotSport so that if we have to intervene or facilitate a resolution between two parties, we can see the history. If it's on your cell phone or in an email, it's very difficult to do. So we want all communication between teams to happen in GotSport. So team A contacts team B. Team A says, we need to reschedule this game. We're available on October 1st, September 17th, and September 9th. Away team says, yeah, September 9th should look good. Let me go check with my club to secure a facility. Okay, so that's the second step. Once a facility is secured and everybody agrees on a date, the home team submits the request to TCSL and GotSport. The away team then accepts that request in GotSport, and then we approve and notify all parties, including referee assigner, field scheduler, in both teams. Okay. So again, a defined process to get us from point A to point B, and don't feel like you have to memorize it. We've outlined this in documentation, but it's really, really important that you begin the process tomorrow by looking at your schedule. If you initiate a reschedule on August 30th, you might not get it done in time, because sometimes these steps, it takes a few days to do. Okay. I covered this, but just some tips. Use the GotSport chat feature so all conversations are documented. Begin early, meaning like tomorrow. Respond promptly. There's nothing worse than getting a message out promptly and then not getting a response back. So our expectation within the window is that clubs work together to resolve those issues. And then lastly, if your team has two coaches and a manager and an assistant manager, for example, I don't know how likely that is, but just as an example, you got a lot of cooks, a lot of people. You might want to identify within your group who's responding to messages instead of, well, I thought Susie was doing it, or I thought Billy was doing it. And, pretty soon it's August 30th and nobody's responded to a message that was sent on the 24th. Okay. Just go through the questions here. Who reschedules referees for a reschedule? Good question. So all referee assignments and TCSL are handled by the home club, the exception of some winter stuff. Okay, so anytime a match is rescheduled, the home club is accountable and responsible to to assign referees for the rescheduled game. Notification from GotSport of communication about a game seems non-existent. The only way I've seen that the opposing team is trying to communicate is to go and check in GotSport. Is that how it works for everyone? Is there some option to change that? So when you say about a game, I think you mean about a game that's trying to be rescheduled, or just a dialogue between opponents. Every time a message is sent, there should be an email that that is sent to the people on that team that there's a new message. From your message, Eric, it sounds like that's not happening. We would like to investigate that. That came up on the last call as well. I know I'm attached to a few teams just for testing purposes, and I get the messages. That said, there might be an issue that we need to look into. If you determine that it's happening and you're not getting those notifications when a message is sent, let us know and we'll do some digging and loop in GotSport if we have to.
I do have one suggestion, Matt. Eric, please check your settings in your GotSport profile. So on your main profile page, if you scroll down, there are communication settings. If you've opted out of a certain type of communication, that will block those notifications.
Yeah, a few people have said that they've gotten emails. So check the settings. If you think your settings are correct, we want to know about it and we'll look into it. It's maybe a silly question, but I'm new to this. What would cause the need to reschedule a game? Possibly playing in a tournament would be one reason. Coach availability is a common one. The goal with the reschedule window is to provide a window where you can address these conflicts if there are conflicts. But then once the deadline comes and goes, September 1, like we're done. The assigners need to be working on referees, the clubs need to be moved on, fields have been reserved. So that's why we provide a window. And then once the window comes and goes, the schedule is set. What if the game is canceled due to weather? Who is responsible for rescheduling? Yeah, so if you have a game canceled during, because of weather, that would be an acceptable reason to reschedule after the deadline, obviously. The two teams work together and they follow the same process that you followed during the reschedule window. Do you use GotSport to reschedule a referee, or where do you do it? Each club is going to handle this a little bit differently. It's not in GotSport. It's likely in another system that may not even be visible to teams. But as long as the referee assigner is notified, game number, date, time, location, they will adjust their schedules to ensure that you have referees. Any further questions on that? So in terms of game day, there are several steps. So the first is to set a roster about who will be playing in that match. Then the second piece of that is actually printing a hard copy. This is in GotSport. You will present that photo roster to the referee. Coaches that are coaching will present an adult pass to the referee. And that looks like this, something similar. It is a best practice for adults to always have their credential. And it should always be presented to the official, so that they know that you've successfully completed the various tasks associated with receiving that credential. Keep it in your wallet, no different than you got to bring your ID to the airport. You got to bring your pass to a soccer game that you're coaching. And then lastly, if the referee is not reported a score within 24 hours, we ask for some help. It is an issue in our league, the number of unreported scores. It's something we're trying to tackle with the state referee committee. It needs to be better. In the interim, we're asking for some help if you notice that a score has not been reported. Just going to the questions. What size roster should we have for game day for 9v9? Conflicts have been an issue in the past for 7v7. So the maximum dressed 9v9 roster is 16. You only need to print the coach one once, and any rules against lamination or anything. No. Yes, you would print it one time. We would encourage you to laminate it. No rules against that by any means. Does the printed roster need to be in color? Ideally, but it's not actually a rule that it must be. Sorry, new at this, but what is an adult pass? So when we talk about these requirements that all adults associated with managing or coaching a team must complete. A pass is a credential that indicates that you've successfully completed those. Okay, so that's what we mean by an adult pass. How and where do you report a score? There's a process. We publish a help article on it. There's a code, and then you enter the game number, and there's a URL where you can, in about 5 seconds, input the score. Will we get the pass from our club? Each club does it a little bit differently. Many clubs will issue that pass to you. Some clubs will laminate it on your behalf and you pick it up somewhere. Some will have you print it out of GotSport. That would be a good question for your club administrator. Will we get the pass from our club? Yes. Where's the pass to print? As stated, it'd be a good question for your club because they may handle it in a certain way. Don, can you help me with this one? Brandon's question.
For coaches and managers, no, it is a step that you have to take. And when you go to do your requirements, you'll see that in the list, in the dashboard in your GotSport profile. You just click details next to it, like the other, the background check and the safe sport, and it takes you to the process to complete that yourself.
The question was, how is the adverse eligibility review completed? Yep, the passes are, somebody just brings up a good point. The passes are in GotSport. If your club doesn't provide them to you, you can print it yourself. That is true, but you can only print it and it will only be available to you once those steps are completed. And then most of you have seen this. 63% of you have. This is the GotSport view. This is an example of a chat conversation on the right-hand side and a list of your games. You'll see a chat icon. You'll see, your various games, where they are, what dates they're on, etc. It's an example of a photo roster. Then on the left-hand side, this is an example of how you actually set it in GotSport. And again, don't feel like you need to know exactly how to do that right this minute. We'll send information out how to do it, just giving a visual in terms of how it looks. Pass on the left-hand side, roster like I mentioned. I'll pause there. As a manager, I'm not able to be at all games due to my work schedule. Is this an issue? I can send the roster with my player and spouse. That is not an issue, no. Just make sure that you delegate, making sure that the roster is in the right people's hands, and anything else that your club might specify in terms of the role that you're covered. But no, you don't have to be at every single game. Do we have access to this presentation? We will be sharing the recording in our email that goes out later with, when I say later, I mean tomorrow. We'll share the recordings in that email. Does everyone need a picture in order to be considered a valid roster for the ref, coach and manager included? The coach and manager, actually, there's no place on the photo roster for that picture. They'll just be listed. That's why they need to have the valid pass. But yes, all players need to have a photo in order to be considered valid. In fact, it won't be possible to add them to the roster without a photo. Is someone available for further questions later if they come up? Always. generally speaking, your first line of defense is your club administrator. If your club administrator has questions about something, they would generally come to us. But yes, someone is generally always available to help you through whatever you need help with. So I'm just reading these. Currently, oh my God. I'm currently at my Godsport to get all communications. To get all communications, you leave the box unmarked for opt out of all mass communications, correct? Yes. Do not opt out. Otherwise, you won't get important information. There's a final 4 question here that I'm gonna wait till the end of our presentation. For new managers and a fact checked. It is my understanding that your game day roster can just be the complete list of players on the team. It doesn't need to be updated to reflect who might be missing for that one game. In general, that is correct. There is one change from last year in terms of setting a match day roster. For those of you new, this it'll be just how it is. I do want to call attention to this point. So you will need to set and take an action for every match about who will be at that match. So you will set a specific match day roster. You will set a specific match day roster for a specific game. Now you can clone a previous roster, okay, but you'll actually be setting a roster each time. So that is a small nuance and a small change.
Clarification as well. If
Yeah.
you have more players on your roster, then you are allowed to dress for a game. You can't just have all of your players on your match card.
Yeah, good clarification.
So if you can have 16 and you have 19, there are always going to be 3 players that don't show up on your match card. So you have to decrease that number to the 16 players who will actually be there.
Don, we have a lot of questions about where to find the pass.
People need to talk to their club and figure out how their club does it. You're going to get information from us in coming weeks, and in coming days actually, about how to find your, rosters for tournaments and print your club rosters and things like that. But in terms of the pass you need for your games, your club should be communicating how they're going about that. If they're distributing it to you, or if they want you to print a pass with your club, your full team roster, and then just use yours out of that. But generally your club will communicate with you about how pass functionality for your club works.
What if a roster changes before the game? Yeah, in general, you wouldn't print your roster until you're pretty sure that you know the players that are going to be on that roster and playing in that game. Otherwise, you can set it to be a little bit bigger as long as it's within the match day limits, as Don mentioned. So for 9v9, you can't go over 16, and for U13 and U14, you can't go over 18. So there's a few different solutions. Can a U13 player play in a roster U13 game and a U14 game on the same day? We don't have a rule that prevents that. Be a better question probably for your club leader, your club director of coaching, but we do not have a rule that prevents that. Can you have all your players if you have less than 16? You can. At the same time, we would encourage you to set a match day roster for the players that'll be actually there. That'll be easier for the referee during check-in rather than scratching off who's not going to be there. what if a player last minute can't make it, but you're at the field? Yeah, no, you can cross off players. That's not an issue. I was just making reference to the fact that it's a best practice as much as you can to set your roster with who you think is and pretty sure are going to be there. Yeah, is there a way to clear past game schedules in Godsport? I still see games from 2021. Yeah, we feel you. We've asked for this. And no, not currently.
But you can filter your schedule to just
You
see
can, correct.
the games for a specific event. So you could filter your schedule to just see the fall 2023 games.
Yeah, so like on my screen here, this event drop down, you can just filter for fall 2023, for example. What is the max roster for U15? 18 dressed. As a reminder, in the fall, because there are many or some birth year players that are U15 that aren't playing high school soccer, we permit, in most leagues throughout the country, permit U15 players to play in the fall only. They have to play U15 in the summer. But the max roster size is 18. Question about who manages the database. You should be able to submit requests to purge the data from the database. I definitely don't manage the database. That'd be a Godsport thing. We are paying customers of Godsport, but definitely I'm not the database administrator. But I understand the point. We've raised it, and I do expect some resolution there. Hopefully not too long from now. Home kits. So this graphic we publish to clubs. This is a version that is slightly outdated. We're going to have a new version published tomorrow. Basically, it's clubs have agreed to wear those kits at home. Okay. What it means is if you're traveling to that club, that you know what they're going to be wearing. Now, there is a caveat because of uniform availability and supply chain issues. There may be small deviations from this. And we ask that people are flexible and understanding. However, it's always best practice to bring 2 kits wherever you go, just in case. But hopefully, this gets us really close to having a really orderly process. So if you're going to, if you're going to Maplebrook, don't wear black. Generally speaking, home is dark and light is away, generally, as you can see here. Question, can you explain how many spots are available in each league level, such as national, regional? Just wondering if there is a limit. I understand that the level needs to match skill level and that club submit for certain levels, but could it happen that a club submits for a specific level and gets denied because of limited spots available at the regional level, for example? No, there aren't finite number of slots. That's the first answer to your question. The second is we trust our clubs to place teams in the right environment. When it comes to the TCSL structure, NPL is managed a little bit differently in terms of the governance. So we meet as club leaders in TCSL before every season. We go through the divisions. Most of the time, the division makeup is about reducing travel as much as possible, rather than it being about scrutiny of while that team was 6-4 and that team was 7-3. But we do show the records to make sure there's an appropriate fit. But ultimately, the decision most often is on the club director to place the teams in the right environment. Don, can you take the safe sport question?
So when you go to your safe sport requirement, there are pretty detailed instructions about how to there are 3 different ways that you can do your certificate. You can check records. It will only automatically sync that way if you're using the exact same email address version of your first name and last name in SafeSport. If that's not the case, there are 2 other methods, which include inputting the certificate number for your completion certificate or uploading a certificate. If you're able to take SafeSport, you should see that upload link in your account. If you can't, I can take a look at it. Just send me an email, Dawn, DAWN, @tcslsoccer.com.
Wanted to make everybody aware that we recently rolled out a new support center on our website. Really proud of this because I think it takes our service to another level. Don was instrumental in putting this together. The team management area is a good area to bookmark and become familiar with. It's at support.tcslsoccer.com. You'll also notice on our website we have this new help widget. And for example, let's just say I entered, report a score. It'll give you how to figure out how to report a score. So we're really pleased to roll this out. We think it'll be helpful. If you still aren't having success, there's this get in touch button where you can send a note to our office and we're happy to help. Wanted to also make everybody aware of an update to our Club Pass rule. Whereas previously the Club Pass rule allowed clubs to openly move players across rosters, we have seen a need to regulate this a bit more and restrict its use to best serve the overall player experience. And we had club director support and buy-in, had a vote. So we made some changes to this rule from previous seasons. Applicable to 11U to 19U age groups only, so it doesn't apply to 9s and 10s, but players are permitted to play down 1 division below their primary roster level where they're listed as a primary player. Without restriction, however, players are permitted to play up divisions or age groups without restriction. So we need and we ask the team coaches, when using the Club Pass, please ensure that you're in compliance with this. There are some consequences that are outlined in our league rules for those that do not follow this or that breach this. So again, applicable to U11 to U19 age groups only. And just to illustrate an example, TCSL regional U12 player can't play at U12 cities. Okay. An NPL Premier player can't play at TCSL State. Now, if there's repeated issues happening where you're playing down 1 level and it is brought to our attention, we'll investigate and follow up. But from a rules perspective, we are restricting at this time playing down 2 levels. Okay. We think this change will allow for appropriate player movement. We think it supports clubs being able to be flexible in their approach to building match day rosters, but it protects the integrity of scheduled games. And we want the game to be played between teams of a like level. And we presented this option based on some feedback we've gotten over the years, and we had support from our clubs. It's updated in our rules. We'll send it out as well, but wanted to give you a heads up. How will this club pass rule be monitored? We have audit tools that Gotsport has built for us in order to audit player movement. But quite frankly, we need coaches to help us be compliant as well. And those that those that choose to break the rule, there'll be consequences, and those are outlined in our rules. Is playing down for an age group considered? Like, could a U13 state play at a U12 cities, or is that jumping too? A U13 player can never play U12 period, and that was implemented with the U.S. soccer mandate several years ago. Can't play down at all. An age group. I agree with the rule that playing down one level makes it possible for the club to have more teams and gives opportunities to more kids. Can't tell, James, if you're meaning that in a positive or a negative, but like I mentioned before, from a rules perspective, we're restricting to 2 levels. However, if there are repeated issues playing down one level, it'll have to be looked at again, and discussions and conversations we'll have with those clubs. But at least there's less separation between a player that's playing TCSL regional versus TCSL cities. So in theory, we can ensure that there's more parity. James says positive. Got it. Any plans to continue any sideline project promos this season? We still have the sideline project. We still have the sideline project up and out there, and we're hoping that as many people that haven't done it do it. And then heading into the summer season, we'll roll out another initiative relative to the sideline project. Those are our plans anyway at this time. Final four. I got to hustle here because we have our next webinar in 3 minutes. So the top 4 teams in each age, gender, and level automatically qualify for the Final Four. It's held October 13th through the 15th at various sites throughout the metro. For example, we will take 4 teams at TCSL National, 4 teams at TCSL Regional, 4 teams at TCSL State, 4 teams at TCSL Cities. There is an opportunity to opt out. You have to do so by September 29th. We ask that everybody takes this seriously because it helps us plan and have a really good event. This championship event has become very, very popular. The feedback we've gotten after we started it a few years ago has been very, very positive, and we want to continue to make it really, really, good. This weekend, October 13th through the 15th, it should be a case of many teams, there are many tournaments, and hopefully teams have it on their schedules and calendar, and we'll play as many did this past summer, and it was a really, really good event. So really excited about this event again. It's one of my favorites, to be honest with you. Just to give an example, if a division has multiple divisions, Division A, Division B, Division C, we would take a team from each division, and then we'd take a wild card for the 4th team. So there aren't 4 teams that qualify from Division A, 4 teams from B, 4 teams from C. It's truly a Final Four event where from each division you take 1 or 2 teams if there's a wild card. You must opt out by September 29th. But I understand we're talking far right now, but thinking ahead, you have winter league offerings for all TCSL levels below the national league, below the national level. Yes, we do. We anticipate there being teams below that level for sure. And if there are specific questions, you can reach out to me directly, matt@tcslsoccer.com. I'd be happy to do what I can to answer those. I may miss a few questions, and if I do, I apologize because I don't want to make the next group wait like I made you guys wait. Are the rules about playing down a level written somewhere? Yes, they are. They are in our league rules. Resources, league rules. How will you know your standings so you can plan on if your team will or will not attend? Those will be on the standings page, tcslsoccer.com/leagues. What happens if you don't opt out, but your team is in the lower part of the bracket and the first 4 opt out? We would expect you to play. So if you really don't want to play, opt out. Can a 12-year-old rostered on a U14 team play down on a U13 or U12 team? Yes.
Quick caveat there, it depends on their age group, because you could be 12 and, it depends on.
They can't play on the U13 team, but they can play on the U12 team. Correct.
Right.
Yep. Good catch. Procedure for determining if a game needs to be postponed due to air quality. Great question. Have a proposal drafted that I'm trying to get some buy-in from this Minnesota Department of Health. And to no surprise of my own, I have not been able to make much progress there. So it's on my radar. It's on our radar. And we believe we do need a policy, and trying to make sure that that we get the right buy-in. I think I got everything. I'm going to fly through this. So who to contact for what? DOC, securing guest players, team placement questions, club administrator, player registration, coaches pass, as we've talked about today, rescheduling, field needs, go-to resource for, anything related to GOT sport. Feel free to come to us if, question about one of our events or, registration, for example. We're generally the go-to resource for your DOC or club administrator. Coach education questions, sideline issues, and we've talked a little bit about that. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time. We appreciate it. We appreciate your dedication to the sport. The games would not go on without people like you, and we're very, very grateful for the opportunity to be able to do what we do, and we couldn't do it without y'all. Look for your schedules tomorrow. Look for important information tomorrow. And if it's 2 p.m. and you're like, gosh, I really wonder if they're going to get schedules out, we will get schedules out. They will come. And again, we're very, very grateful for the opportunity to be a part of this. So have a great night, everybody.